The United States national debt crossed $34 trillion in 2024. That is roughly $102,000 owed for every single American man, woman, and child alive today. Your grocery bill is up 21% since 2020. Your rent, your car payment, your insurance, all of it costs more, while your paycheck buys less. Here is what nobody in Washington is telling you. We have seen this exact movie before. It played out over 300 years in the most powerful empire the ancient world ever produced, and it ended in total economic collapse. This is the story of Rome, and it is uncomfortably, urgently the story of right now. Picture Rome in 211 BC. The city is gleaming marble and military muscle. The Roman denarius, a small, heavy silver coin, is the dollar of the ancient world. Merchants from Carthage to Constantinople accept it without question. Its silver content is an almost pure 98%. Roman citizens trust it the way Americans once trusted a dollar backed by gold at Bretton Woods. Rome's economy is the envy of every civilization on the planet. Fast forward to 235 AD, a turning point historians now call the crisis of the 3rd century. In just 50 years, Rome will cycle through 26 emperors, most of them assassinated. Military campaigns are endless. The borders are hemorrhaging money. The government's expenses have catastrophically outrun its tax revenues, a problem that should sound jarringly familiar to anyone who watched the 2023 and 2025 U.S. debt ceiling negotiations play out in real time on Capitol Hill. Emperor Gallienus, ruling from the city of Mediolanum, modern-day Milan, faces an impossible arithmetic. The treasury is empty. The army still needs paying. The borders still need defending. And so, quietly, his mint masters begin doing something that will doom the empire. They start shaving the silver out of the denarius and replacing it with cheap copper. By 268 AD, the coin that was once 98% silver contains less than 2%. The Roman people are about to learn a devastating lesson that 21st century Americans are beginning to relearn right now. Principle 1. Debasement is always a stealth tax on the poor. When Emperor Gallienus ordered his mint to reduce the silver content of the denarius from 50% down to just 2% between 253 and 268 AD, he did not announce it. There was no Senate vote, no public referendum. Roman merchants, however, are not stupid. They begin examining coins closely, weighing them, biting them. By 265 AD, prices in Roman Egypt, documented in surviving papyrus records, had increased roughly 1,000% over a single generation. A measure of wheat that cost 16 drachmas in 200 AD cost 120,000 drachmas by 304 AD. That is not a typo. Draw the parallel. The US Federal Reserve expanded its balance sheet from roughly $4 trillion to nearly $9 trillion between 2020 and 2022, an unprecedented monetary expansion. The Consumer Price Index rose 9.1% in June 2022, the highest reading since 1981. The mechanism is different. The outcome is identical. More currency units chasing the same goods. Purchasing power evaporates. The people who suffer most are the ones holding cash savings and fixed wages. Principle 2. Debt ceilings are political theater. The real crisis is structural. Rome did not have a formal debt ceiling, but it had something functionally identical, a rigid commitment to military spending that could not be reduced without risking the empire's survival. Between 100 and 300 AD, military expenditure consumed an estimated 70 to 80% of all Roman state revenues, according to historian Peter Heather's calculations in The Fall of the Roman Empire. The spending was non-negotiable. The revenue was finite. The gap was filled by debasement. In 2025, the United States federal government allocates approximately 13% of its budget to defense, but mandatory spending, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and debt interest payments now consumes over 70% of the entire federal budget, with interest on the national debt alone projected to exceed $1 trillion annually by 2026, according to Congressional Budget Office estimates. The spending is structurally locked in. The debt ceiling debate is a negotiation about the symptom, not the disease. Rome never solved the disease either. Principle 3. Smart Romans moved into hard assets. Here is where history becomes actionable. The Roman citizens who preserved their wealth across the inflation crisis of the 3rd century were not the ones who held denarii in clay jars under their floorboards. They were the landowners, the grain merchants who converted profits immediately into agricultural land, the wealthy families documented in surviving Roman legal texts who hoarded bronze, gold, aurei coins, which retained their gold content even as silver denarii were debased, and physical commodities. Historian Brian Ward Perkins, in The Fall of Rome and the End of Civilization, documents archaeological evidence showing a dramatic shift in Roman elite wealth composition during this period, away from liquid monetary assets and toward real property, farmland, and durable goods. Principle 4. Diversification across provinces was Roman portfolio theory. Elite Romans with the means to do so spread assets across geographically distinct provinces. A senator might hold grain farms in North Africa, olive orchards in Hispania, and urban rental properties in Rome itself. This was not accidental. It was a deliberate hedge against the localized economic shocks that characterized the crisis era. One province might suffer a military raid, a drought, or a currency disruption more severe than another. Geographic distribution of hard assets was the Roman equivalent of modern portfolio diversification. Principle 5. The collapse came faster than anyone predicted. This is perhaps the most chilling parallel of all. Roman chroniclers writing in 250 AD were not predicting the empire's fall. They were forecasting a temporary turbulence. The economy had survived crises before. It would survive again. It did not. The Western Roman Empire formally collapsed in 476 AD, but the economic rot had become irreversible nearly 2 centuries earlier. The historian Edward Gibbon calculated that from the moment silver debasement became policy rather than exception, the empire had roughly 200 years before the consequences became unsurvivable. 200 years is both a long time and no time at all. So what does a Roman emperor's currency manipulation 800 years ago mean for your 401k balance in 2025? More than you might think. Let us build your action plan, one concrete step at a time. Action step 1, and you can do this by Friday. Check the real return on your savings account. Take your current savings account interest rate, likely somewhere between 4 and 5% in late 2024 and early 2025, and subtract the current personal consumption expenditures inflation index, which the Federal Reserve targets at 2%, but which has run hotter. If your real inflation-adjusted return is negative or barely positive, you are experiencing a mild version of what Roman denarius holders experienced in 260 AD. Your money is losing purchasing power in real terms. This is not a catastrophe yet, but awareness is step 1. Action step 2. This week, audit the inflation exposure inside your 401k or IRA. Most Americans have the majority of their retirement savings in standard target date funds that are heavily weighted toward bonds and cash equivalents. During inflationary periods, bonds perform poorly in real terms, exactly as Roman treasury bonds, the nearest ancient equivalent, were destroyed by debasement. Log into your account this week. If your bond allocation exceeds 40% and you are under 50 years old, research whether a tilt toward broad equity index funds, specifically S&P 500 index funds with ultra-low expense ratios, gives you better long-term inflation protection. Equities are the modern equivalent of Roman farmland. Productive assets that generate real output regardless of what currency units are doing. Action step 3. Consider a small, hard asset allocation. The Roman elites who survived the 3rd century inflation crisis held some portion of their wealth in gold Eerily. Modern financial planners generally suggest a 5 to 10% portfolio allocation to inflation-resistant hard assets. Physical gold, gold ETFs, treasury inflation-protected securities known as TIPS or commodity index funds. This is not a prediction that the dollar will collapse. It is the same hedging logic that kept Roman senators solvent, while their less prepared neighbors were ruined. Diversification across asset types is not pessimism. It is engineering. Action step 4. Reduce high-interest variable debt now, not later. Roman merchants who carried debt denominated in debased denarii actually had an accidental advantage in the short term. Inflation eroded the real value of their obligations. But when price controls were imposed under Emperor Diocletian's edict on maximum prices in 301 AD, the economic disruption that followed wiped out debtors and creditors alike. In our environment, credit card debt at 20 to 28% annual interest is a structural threat to your net worth, regardless of what inflation does. Prioritize eliminating it before building speculative positions. Action step 5. Build a 6-month expense reserve in a high-yield account. This is the most boring, most powerful, and most historically validated wealth protection step available to any American household today. Roman landowners who weathered the crisis had grain reserves, physical buffer stocks that made them independent of the chaotic marketplace for months or years at a time. Your modern equivalent is a fully funded emergency fund in a high-yield savings account or money market fund accessible within 24 hours, equal to at least 6 months of essential expenses. This is not exciting. Neither is surviving an empire's collapse. Rome fell not because its soldiers were weak or its citizens were lazy. It fell because its financial architecture rotted from the inside, slowly, then suddenly, in ways that felt theoretical right up until the moment they were catastrophic. The parallels to 2025 are not perfect. America is not Rome. But the mechanisms, debasement, structural spending obligations, political paralysis around fiscal reform, and the quiet erosion of purchasing power, those mechanisms do not respect centuries. They are features of human financial behavior, not historical accidents. The 5 steps we covered today are not predictions of doom. They are the same rational hedging strategies that wealthy Romans used to protect their families across one of history's worst economic crises. Now, I want to hear from you. Which ancient civilization should we decode next? Drop your answer in the comments right now. Ancient Greece, Mesopotamia, the Han Dynasty of China, or the Aztec Empire? The top answer becomes our next episode. If this video made you think differently about your money, subscribe and hit the bell. New ancient money secrets drop every week on Wealth of Ages. The past is the most underrated financial advisor alive.